Occasionally I take my mountain bike out for a spin, and I can't remember when, but I discovered that if I'm riding on gravel and I lock the back brakes, the back wheel begins to slide out a bit. And I found out that if I can hold my balance and keep that back brake locked, the bike will actually slide all the way out and around so that I'm facing the opposite direction from which I came. Kind of a neat little trick that I enjoy doing sometimes. Now, I've been riding bicycles since I was a boy, but it was only years later that I discovered this neat little trick that I could do. I was kind of surprised and very pleased that I was able to find this out. I don't know if you've had that experience perhaps as well, perhaps on your computer or some gadget or device that you have. You've had it for quite a long time, and then suddenly you discover this neat little thing that you can do with it, and you didn't even know about it, and then you discover it, and it's this new possibility opens up, and you're very pleased with yourself, you're very pleased with what you can do. It's the same with becoming a disciple. We've maybe heard the word disciple for a long time, but we might not know that there's a new possibility here, that we can actually become disciples of Jesus even today. In the New Testament, of course, we hear of numerous people who became disciples. We can think of Peter and John. They met Jesus and then they became his disciples. But even after Jesus died and rose again, there are other people who became his disciples. Probably one of the most memorable is Paul. He never met Jesus during his earthly life. Indeed, he was intent on persecuting the Christians. And you might recall that episode where he was on the way to Damascus to persecute the Christians, and he has this encounter with Jesus, and he falls to the ground. Jesus says, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" And Paul says, "Who are you?" And he says, "I'm Jesus whom you are persecuting." And that's the turning point in his life. After that, he dedicates his life to Christ. He becomes a disciple. He enters into friendship with Christ. He knew Christ in a personal way. He walked with him. And in the book of Acts, in the New Testament, we see this friendship taking place. At one point, he's going to Corinth, which is a city in Greece, and he's facing a lot of opposition. And then there Jesus speaks to him in a vision and says, "Don't be afraid, I'm with you at this time." And so you get this sense in the book of Acts that there's this living friendship between Christ and Paul. And after Paul, there's been countless others who've become disciples of Christ, generation after generation. A disciple is one who has entered into friendship with Jesus, who knows Jesus in a personal way. A disciple is still learning. A disciple hasn't figured everything out yet. A disciple is still making mistakes, but has entered into this friendship with Christ, knows him in a personal way, walks with him. We can choose to become a disciple today. There's this new possibility which is open to us. Certainly we probably won't have visions like Paul or anything like that, but by faith we can know Christ in this personal way. In St. John's Gospel, chapter 15, Jesus is speaking to his disciples and he says, "I no longer call you servants, I call you friends." And he says the same thing to us as well. "I call you friends." And then in the book of Revelation, there's this picture painted for us. Jesus is speaking and he says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock, and anyone who opens the door, I will come and have a meal with him." That's the same for us today. He's at the door, knocking, ready and waiting. All we have to do is open that door, enter into that friendship with Christ, put our trust in him, talk to him, share our life with him, ask him for help when we're in trouble. A concrete thing we can do this week perhaps is to say a little prayer. Jesus, I trust in you. Jesus, I trust in you. Come to know this peace, this joy and this hope that he wants to communicate to us. To the boys and girls receiving the first Holy Communion today, communion is the supreme way to deepen this friendship with Christ. Here is this wonderful occasion. Christ comes to you, really and truly, body and blood, soul and divinity, to feed you, to nourish you. He will dwell inside you. Open your hearts to him this day. Walk with him in friendship every day of your life. A disciple is one who has entered into friendship with Jesus. A disciple still learning, hasn't figured everything out, but is walking with Christ, knows Christ in a personal way. There's that image of Christ knocking at the door, waiting for us to open. We can respond to this call of Christ, enter into friendship with him, share our life with him, trust him, walk with him, ask him for help when we're in trouble, and so come to know this peace and joy and hope for the future that he wants to communicate. May his name be praised.